Each district can adopt its own DFC, does not have to go along with GMA 9, and my understanding is that the consultant, when she submitted her scope of work, she wouldn't have analysis and recommendations until the summer of 2016. When she initially proposed what she was going to be doing and then teamed up to provide this analysis, this was a long-range planning where she was going to accumulate a lot of research and a lot of documents and make some recommendations to GMA 9. The track that they were on has somehow been accelerated. I don't know if it was Ron or GMA 9 that has asked for that acceleration, but she hasn't even made recommendations yet, based on regional planning documents. Not local, but regional planning documents. My suggestion, and this is something that I would ask Rick to find out more about this meeting, because my understanding was that she wasn't going to make analysis and recommendations until in the future. And whatever they're asking for now, whether it's a preliminary nod or whatever, you may have a chance to express your sentiments, but there's a lot of data out there about whether that 30-foot is sustainable or not, including in this community. And I'd like to suggest, for those who are wondering where the constituents are, my name is Matt Heineman. I'm one of those. I'd like to speak on behalf of the unsustainability of this 30-foot drawdown. And Jacob's Well is not just in jeopardy of drying up, it has, and we've got other springs in this community that are in that same situation. And you've got management records in 2008 of what your current pumping levels are, and you're exceeding a sustainable limit right now.
That's not right. That's not right.
I have facts.
Data too.
I have facts that I'd be happy to submit.
We're pumping less than 5,000 acre feet.
And under a 2005 management board, 3,000 acre feet was the recommendation for sustainable yield.
2008 was your quote. In 2008, we turned in 5,665 acre feet.
That's right.
Today, we're producing less than that.
I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm saying that sustainable yield is something that's in debate. We don't have science about what sustainable yield means in terms of Jacob's Well. For the last 10 years, it has flowed at less than 2 CFS for 65% of the time. I'm not arguing over the data. I'm pointing to some data that I'd be happy for this board and others to review. The analysis that's being done on behalf of the DFC wasn't supposed to be turned in until down the road. The consultants are moving early in their timeline. The preparation from this community and others is just delayed because they're moving faster than we expected. And there is analysis that I'd like to give you guys, and I'm not trying to be contrary. I know that there is good data about what our pumping limits are, but you did have a recommendation of what sustainable yield was by this board in 2005. That's considerably less than what the pumping that Al Brown just mentioned is. And the reason that is the case is because aquifer yields and spring flows are the issue. And whether you look at 30-foot drawdown or 2, the 19-foot drawdown that this 30-foot DFC is going to create for Hays County will dry up the springs.
It hasn't yet.
It will.
Sure.
It's in the process
of it. If you're supporting it, you're supporting that fact. That's what I'm suggesting. So if you present a range...
And I know we're not supposed to ask...
Jimmy, hang on just a second. If you present a range...
No, I have a question for you real quick.
Okay, please do.
How many gallons are underground? How much water is there?
Are you asking about what the sustainable yield
No,
of Middle
I'm asking
Trinity is?
how much water is in this bathtub underground?
The Jacob's Well version of the Middle Trinity?
Right under this, right here in our district. How much water is in our district?
How do you plan to quantify that?
I have no idea. I'm hoping
Okay.
you were the smart one here.
No, I'm saying that current pumping has exceeded a sustainable yield. That's what I'm saying. And I'm saying it because the evidence is in the springs don't lie. And they have dried up. Not because of drought, but the combination of drought and pumping. And this is the debate. The debate is how this board plans to manage that situation. That's the debate. If you plan to manage it by saying you would like to go to 30 foot as a drawdown, that's one path. If you plan to manage it by saying we want to be a sustainable yield, conservation is in our board's mandate, and that's the direction we want to go, that's different than 30 foot. That's what I'm advocating for, Jimmy. Not what the math is about what's in the bathtub,
That's
but whether 30 foot
How
is...
much water do we have?
So if you're asking how much do you have before the springs go dry, you don't have that much. It already has. That situation happens. Whether it's wet years or dry years, accumulated pumping, it doesn't matter. We've already had the springs go dry, Jimmy. Are we arguing against that?
And these are the very, this type of discussion is what I believe we need to have in an open situation for just this thing rather than here tonight. I don't see that delaying this vote by 1 week, giving everybody the opportunity to get their questions answered, Al, I was certainly.
No, you know why
expecting to be
I'm
a part of
was
that.
upset is because I saw this thing on the agenda and I was prepared to talk to you about it. But that's out, no, that's gone now.
Informed me about
That's
that,
gone
you
now,
know.
including sustainability, and I disagree with your interpretation of sustainability. Sustainability is defined by the USGS and by the Texas Water Development Board. And the drawdown is the sustainability.
And I think that's one of the problems we run into with this board right now. We have people that are part of this district, that read this ahead of time, know what's going on, and we're prepared to do something, and we're worried about calling someone Barton Edwards and asking them, what do you think, fellas? And to me, if you're gonna be Barton, then I guess move over there and get on that board and y'all can save the world.
It would also be helpful if I knew ahead of time that these presentations were coming up, you know.
The item is on the agenda.
It is, but I didn't know you were planning to present anything now. A little heads up on that would have been helpful too. So this whole thing, to me, is just indicative of the fact that we need to have some set-aside time to discuss this before this board moves on it. I can tell you right now that the GMA-9 is going to go forward with it no matter how we vote. I think it's important for this board to understand and our constituents to understand how and why that is going to happen and what the effect on us is going to be, if any. But I want answers to those questions. My constituents have been banging down my phone and my emails for 3 days since this came out on it. I know docs have too, because we are the Wimberley representatives.
Mine and Henley have called me a lot, because we're the ones who are gonna have no water, and y'all are gonna have water coming out of a spring, and I'm gonna be with nothing in Henley.
In 2008, there were wells that dried up in western Hays County too. You
Right.
have residents in western Hays County that have dried up.
We have residents in Henley that have
Yes.
dried up,
So exactly.
and I can
They've
assure you of
already
that.
dried up.
And there is a consideration this time around for the DFC, which is spring flow. And I have a concern that I've not seen that addressed in the studies. I'm hoping that it has to be addressed in the study. But again, we don't have that. So my feeling is that the whole thing is premature and we're being rushed into it. And I want the opportunity to have good science as much as possible, a good understanding of this, before I support it. Even if I know I'm going to lose, my vote is going to be worthless, I want that information. That, to me, is my job, to have good science and good information upon which to base my
Can I make a
decisions.
public comment, please? Andrew Backus, former board member. Just to key off of a really important thing that Matt pointed out, and Jimmy, I gotta call you on it, you've falsely represented this historically, which is
What are you talking
that
about?
Let me finish.
each
Please.
groundwater district, with the approval of the Texas Water Development Board, can adopt their own desired future condition. As long as the Water Development Board has done their modeling and said it's compatible, they could actually have a different desired future condition. So it doesn't need to be 30 across the board. The idea of going, well, everybody else is voting for 30, so it doesn't matter if my constituents want 25, I'm gonna go for 30 because that's what everybody else is doing. That's not really representing that is not representing your constituents. That's making an excuse to go along. So if you don't believe me, please check with your attorney. But I assure you, at least unless the law has changed, when I was on the board, you could have a distinct desired future condition as long as the Water Development Board determined it was compatible.
I don't think I ever said you couldn't have that. I've never said you can't have that.
Furthermore, to this point about desired future conditions, you can target spring flow as a desired future conditions. There are 3 other GMAs in the state of Texas that have adopted DFCs that have spring flow targeted in their DFC. Not 30-foot average drawdown, but spring flow itself targeted.
We're mandated by the state to consider that in the DFC.
Absolutely. And the thing that Al said about 5,000 acre feet, I just want to point out that 19 acre feet, this 30-foot DFC takes us to 9,000 acre feet. Almost double what our current pumping
In
is.
50 years.
In 50 years.
Right, but we look at it every 5 years.
I'm only suggesting that currently we have issues with artesian spring flow in this community. Whether it's now, 2 years
When it
from now,
doesn't rain, yes,
3
we do
years
have
from
some
now,
issues, there's no doubt.
during drought, during moderate drought, we have issues.
During drought, we have issues. That's a fact. Well, that's a hard one to figure out. When it rains, the springs flow great. I have springs in Henley that flow when it rains. It's wild. It comes out of the ground and everything. It's pretty neat.
So
for a
the
few
economic
days.
impact of those springs drying up are different here in Wimberley than they are on the seeps that are coming out of the hills that you're talking about, Jimmy. I'm just
No,
suggesting.
not at all.
And the economic considerations are also part of this DFC. And if you want to compare them, show me a study that shows what Henley's economic considerations are, and I can show you the one that shows what Cypress Creek and the Wimberley Valley's economic considerations are. And we can talk about how they're vastly different. But we can also say,
Henley is more important
that
than where I
under this
live, I have water.
current, under this current DFC, you can have different geographic regions within the same groundwater district. You can have your Henley DFC, Wimberley can have its DFC. We can separate out based on geographic conditions that are different. It's in the law. I'm just
Until the two
suggesting.
butt up against one another.
Until
And
the
if
two-
you have 30 feet here and you have 0 over here, how do you handle the
can't
flow?
And
do
the
that.
two are already running up
No, you
against each
can't.
other in the history of this board, Al. They've just been negotiated in terms of
I'm not here
politics.
with the history of the
They've just been negotiated in terms of politics. I'm suggesting there's good science.
Way out of line.
Well, this is why I want us to have a separate discussion on this with other input. Al, certainly we look forward to your input, but
I'm looking forward
just-
to finding out what you're gonna say on that day. That's what
I'm planning to listen mostly. This is an information, I'm needing information, I want to hear, so I will be listening. Then we will take a vote, and it may be that we've determined we'll go along with it, or that we want to do a separate one, or whatever. I can't answer that right now because I don't know, and I can't speak for anybody else on the board. But I know that where I am is that I don't understand all this. I have concerns about the spring flow issue because I know what's happened to the flow of springs here in Wimberley in the past 2 or 3 years. And I have a responsibility to the people I represent to get that information and understand what I'm doing. And I plan to fulfill that to the very best of my ability.
I'll say too, from my point, is I feel no obligation at all to lockstep with the decisions of other, or previous boards. We need to look at it, that's why we review it every 5 years, as I understand it. And I'm concerned about the fact that we're just going right on along saying 30 foot when this community doesn't want that. I represent this community, and we don't want to get that close to the borderline. I think that expressing now some concern for it, and expressing the fact that we're not walking lockstep, we want to look at it more closely. We have concerns because our community functions, as he was saying, on the water. So that's my position on it. It's just that I feel like that I need to know more about it. I'm sorry, I'm so ignorant about it. That's the case, and I can't vote for sustaining the 30 foot as I know it now.